In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build a high poly and a low poly model, because we're going to take our low poly model and we're going to render out our high poly detail into a set of textures to be used with the low poly. So I have a couple different examples here of shields. I've gone through and I've squared them off. So I'm going to start off with this shield here. So I'm going to pull it over into my material editor. I'm going to set up a standard material. Assign that, and I'm going to come here to the front. I'm going to make a plane, which I'm going to center in the world. I'm going to make sure this is square because I know that my reference is a square image because I went into Photoshop and I squared it off. Let's move this down, pull this back a little bit. I'm going to turn on shaded here, and then I'm going to right click and say show realistic material viewport. Alright, so my shield may not be perfectly cylindrical going all the way around, so I'm not really going to worry about that. One thing I do know is that it's about 100 meters across, so if I adjust the size of my plane to be about 100 by 100, and I'll just scale this up a little bit bigger, because shields were roughly about 100 centimeters across, so about a meter. I am working in centimeters here. Yep, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna hit, let's see, so let's move this up. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start modeling out this detail, and it's always going to be easier if you're modeling out detail straight up and down instead of at an angle. So I'm just going to rotate my reference to kind of line this up with straight up and down. There we go. I'm going to right click on my reference. I'm going to go into object properties, turn on backface cull, turn off show frozen and gray. I'm going to right click on it now and free selection. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and using my spline tools is I'm going to create this shape. So I'm going to come in and just kind of rough out this general shape. I'm just clicking with the spline in order to kind of draw out the shape as it exists. Now, the reason I'm going to build this with splines is I know that splines will allow me to get a more interesting shape easier than if I was to try and go through and model it out just with polygons. I know that I have more control over the amount of detail I'm adding in. Alright, so close this off. There we go. Okay, if I go into vertex, there we go. There's my shape. It's the general shape of this detail. Okay. Now I could go through and I could start working out that detail. So I'm going to use a bevel profile in here. So I'm going to come in and I want to define what the profile looks like. So from the side, I'm going to make a little rectangle here. I'm going to convert this to an edit spline. And then in vertex, I'm just going to pull this over. And I want to take this shape here and I'm going to fillet it. 0.1 is a little bit too small. Let's do like a 0.5. That's too much. We'll do 0.25. Alright, there we go. So now I get a nice round curve. I want to make sure that any detail I have that I want to bake into a texture is not just totally flat. Okay, so now I could take these guys, get rid of them, and that's all I want for my, I kind of want this shape for my texture I'm going to bake out. Alright, there we go. When we're baking out texture detail, we don't want anything that comes straight up. If it just comes straight up, then it's not going to, that detail's not going to bake out. Alright, here's my overall shape. If I go into vertex, I'm going to take these shapes here and I'm going to make them smooth. There we go. And then down here, I want to take this and I'm going to fillet it. So this time I'm going to click and drag to adjust it. Well, let's just do 0.5. There we go. Same thing down here at the bottom. We'll change that to a 0.5. And then here, I'm going to switch to scale. And then in scale, I'm going to change my pivot to selection center. And I'm going to make those guys straight like that. And then I'm going to go in and fillet both of them. not they've both been, well, not filleted. Come over here, 0.25. There we go. Okay. So now I can come in and select my bevel profile. I'm going to pick my profile, which was the shape that I made earlier. If I hit F3, there he is. Okay, so here's my detail that's going to be on my shield, all right, or at least the start of it. Okay, and then I can come in and I'm going to go into Object Properties and make him slightly transparent. Say OK. Now I need to make it more transparent. Object Properties, I'm going to take them down to 0.1 and say OK. And I'm going to change my display. Now I'm working in an earlier version of Max. So if I go to shade it, there we go, F4 to get the edges. Perfect. There we go. Okay. Now I want to have this other shape that kind of comes across here. For that, I'm just going to make a cylinder. Click and drag to get its general shape, and then pull out. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. There we go. So he's going to sit up here from above. Let's pull him so that he's kind of poking out the top. There we go. And then we can kind of take this shape down. There we go. And then down here at the end of the shape, I kind of want him to sort of come down the end. Let's change this to shaded. I don't want it to just end like this. I'm going to take this cylinder and convert it to an edit poly. And in vertex mode, I'm going to come in and grab my vertices on the side and connect them together, because I want to just take this polygon at the top. I'm going to hinge from edge. So that just involves coming in and clicking on the edge. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. I'm just going to increase how many edges that is. There we go. So that kind of takes that shape down. Now on the top level, I'm just going to switch to an FFD 2x2. I'm going to grab the control points at the bottom and just kind of scale that down a little bit. Or actually here in the front, let's just move that down here and then scale it in a bit. Oops. Yeah, perfect. Okay. And this is going to kind of sit down here at the end. This part's up here at the top. That's going to be underneath this ring on the shield, so you're not going to necessarily notice it. And then let's go ahead and we're just going to create some spheres that are going to kind of sit out here. Now these aren't completely round spheres. The end of them gets a little bit flat, so I'm going to use a FFD 4x4. And I'm just going to grab the center control points on it. Oops, I'm on lattice. I want to be on control points. There we go. Grab just the center. There we go. That's a little bit closer to the shape I want. Alright, and then move this out. Let's see, is he sitting out there? Alright, that's about right. And then we'll just make this guy a little bit smaller. There we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll just drag them over to the other side. Come on. Hold shift and drag. There we go. Instance OK. Actually, let's just do it this way. I'm going to convert this guy to an edit poly. I'm going to attach the spheres to him and just put a symmetry on it. And there we go. Now the symmetry's off a little bit. That's alright. Let's just go in. I'm going to grab this edge here in the center and put the symmetry on that. There, perfect. Convert to edit poly. And then over here in hierarchy, affect pivot only and center to object. There we go. Now the pivot's centered on this thing. Perfect. Okay, so there's our nice little detail that we have. We'll take this guy and we're going to make him opaque. Object properties 1. Okay. Alright, so that's our first set of detail there. Okay, now let's get some of these other details going on here. So basically, imagine in order to get this, let's consider this thing kind of being like a, using the lathe tool. So I'm going to have like a raised area that comes out here. I'm going to have another, I'm going to clone this over. And this guy, he's going to be a raised area right over there. And then it's got a little bit of a raised lip down on the end. Okay, so we'll expand that a little bit. Oops, a little bit wider. And then I'm going to need one more. It's going to kind of be the top up here. There we go. A little bit higher up. Perfect. And then I want one rectangle that's going to just, I kind of need something to hold all of them together. So do a copy on that. And this one I'm going to convert to an edit spline. Grab the edge. And then this edge here I'm just going to take all the way down to the end. Okay. Alright. We'll go into spline, select it. Oops. I need to attach the other ones before I can do any work. There we go. Now they're all one shape. Alright, Boolean. Let's just make a union out of all of these. There we go. Come into segment, delete, and delete. Now, anytime that we're using rendered, anytime we're baking out detail, the way that baking works is you don't want to have any straight 90-degree angles like this. And so I'm going to come in here and just right click and convert all these points, vertex, convert them all to corners. You never want anything straight up, because when the rays cast and they hit the surface, they're not going to see anything here. So you want to make sure that you always taper everything in a little bit, right? Because you want to be able to see that edge. Now, corners, we'll see something here, but we will get a better result if we actually go in and do something like a fillet. All right, that's too much. We'll do 0.125. So now we got a nice subtle bit of an edge there. And maybe I might even take this one and make it a little less of an angle. There we go. Alright, this guy probably just goes straight up a little bit more. Probably delete his little friend there, and this one too. And I can actually make him a Bezier and grab the corner and move that around. There we go. Let's check this guy out. He needs to be rounded out somewhat too. Again, we'll come in here and we'll fillet it. 0.25. Okay. That's going to be the basic form of our shield. And so let's zoom out here. We're going to go to perspective. And so if we take this and do a lathe, hey, look at that. Now, this is going to be our high poly model. And so because it's our high poly model, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we really don't see facets. And so I'm going to crank this up to like 36, and I'm going to go even higher. I'm going to put this up at 64. There we go. Let's take a look. Part of our problem here is we need to kind of move where our center is. So we're going to pull this over. That's what we need. That's better. Alright. Let's take a look. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good. Alright, I like the shape of that. So I'm going to take this and, again, hierarchy. I'm going to do effect pivot only and center to object. And I'm going to take this whole thing and rotate it 90 degrees. Okay. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to zero it out in the world. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to take this shape here. And I want to zero this out in the world. And then I want to take this shape here, and I want to zero that out as well. Let's just take this whole spline and just convert it to an edit poly. And then where's the center? There we go. I'm going to grab this edge and put a symmetry on it, convert it to an edit poly, and same thing, hierarchy, effect pivot only, centered object. There we go. Okay. So zero that out in the world. Alright, so now we've gone through the trouble of centering this guy. Let's see how he looks. That's looking pretty good. So I'm going to take my spline and I'm going to say attach this shape to it. And I'm going to go in, select this polygon. I want to make sure this guy is already set to B1 smoothing group because I want to make sure I don't have any facets on him. I think down on the end I'm going to get weird shading because there's still geometry here. So I'm going to delete these polys. There we go, that's better. That's not bad. Okay. Alright, so let's take this whole thing and we're going to move it in so that it sits right about at the base, just like that. That's pretty good. Alright. And then it looks like, if I'm looking at my reference here, it should be a little bit more shallow. So I'm going to go ahead and select this shape, put an FFD 2x2 on it, and just make this whole thing just a little bit thinner. There we go. And then in element, I'm going to select the other pieces, edit, select invert, and I'm going to slide down both the spheres as well as this other cylinder so he's kind of sitting partway inside. Alright, there we go. Now let's go ahead and grab, alright, so now I need to take the whole thing. Let's make sure this is a front view again. So I'm going to go top level. I'm going to unfreeze all. I'm going to select my background and just clone another copy over here so I could see it. And I'm going to freeze them both. There we go. Alright, so the shape comes up and it just kind of matches. So I'm going to get a little bit creative here. Take a little creative license. I'm going to pull it up so it definitely comes in here, but I don't really want this shape to blend. I kind of want it to just go inside. So here from the left, I'm going to take this point and just pull this in. There we go. So now the shape kind of disappears inside. Perfect. Alright. Next, I already have my shield here, and I've set it to be, its origin is at 0. So if I take this piece, I'm going to set its origin to be up at 0 on Z as well. So now if I take this shield and make it somewhat transparent, I can take this shape and say Tools, Array. I'm going to turn on the preview, and now with the Array tool I'm going to rotate it along the Z axis. There we go. And so what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the amount of them that exist, or I should say the number of degrees that they're rotating. So it's about 40 degrees going all the way around. It looks to be about the same amount. Let's say OK. Right, so now all those other shapes sit out there. So now I need to get in a couple more details. I want to get this kind of little circular piece here. So let's kind of work on getting that shape put together. I'm going to kind of make that shape up here at the top because it's going to be a little bit easier to manage. All right, we'll make a little circle about that shape, and then I'm going to make another circle that's going to kind of sit about here. There we go. All right, I'm going to take my first circle and convert it to an edit spline, and then attach the other one to it. And now, if I select this spline and perform a Boolean, there we go, I can take the bottoms of these shapes as well as this side. I'm going to take this side here. I actually want to fillet this just a little bit, kind of round them out. There we go. And now if I take this and perform a lathe on it, let's do a lathe. There we go. I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. Oh, I'm sorry, 90 degrees. There we go. Perfect. And let's again, we're going to come down here, effect pivot only, Well, let's see. First off, we'll just go into move. We'll make sure the shape is sitting right at x, 0. And then effect pivot only. We'll move the center of it down to 0 so we can once again go in and do tools, array. And there we go. So now we got our little details here. So if we take a look, object properties, set that to 1. All right, there we go. So we're getting all of our details. They're all coming in. The shield's starting to look pretty good. We'll do one last little detail to kind of get this sort of scalloped edge that kind of goes around the side here. So let's go in and we're just going to make, oops. All right, I'm going to hide this shape. And I just want to come in and I'm going to make a circle. All right, it's going to be centered in the world. So we'll zero that out. There we go. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to adjust its radius out a little bit. And now I'm just going to convert to an edit spline. I'm going to come in here to segments and I'm going to divide this a couple of times. Divide it once, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's good. Now I just want to grab every other point that exists. No, yeah, it's not going to be quite right. You know what? Instead, I'll do something different. All right, I'm kind of looking where all these shapes are. So how many I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9. There's probably a better way to handle this. That's not something I'm thinking of right now. So I think what we will do instead is I'm going to come in here and just manually refine it. So I have one point about where each of these guys sit. Yeah, I'm not going that route at all. I'm going to take this shape here, I'm going to rotate it so it's going straight up and say OK. And now I made this one unique. It's not an instance of the other ones. I'm going to convert it to an edit poly. And I'm going to go through and remove all that other detail. And now I'm going to take this shape. And here in the sub-object, I'm just going to drag it down a little bit. And I'm going to scale it, but I'm going to scale it non-uniform. I just want to make it to be just a little bit thinner as well. So we'll put an FFD on it. Kind of drag that down to be a little bit thinner than the other one. There we go. Just a little bit thinner. Convert them to an edit poly. And what do we got? Alright, we're almost there. Let's put a FFD 4x4. I'm going to grab these outer edges and just scale those sideways. There we go. Now my shape's just going to disappear in there. I can even grab this one, grab all these points and scale them out. Perfect. And then here down on the end, what I'm going to do is in wireframe, I'm just going to come in. Let's unhide all so I can see. Okay, so there's my ring going around. I just need to grab a point like this that I can connect under Edit Vertices. Oops, I need to get rid of this edge. I'm going to select that edge and just click Remove. And now, if I go into Vertex mode, I should be able to connect here. Yeah, we'll connect that. So then I can grab these polygons and delete them. Perfect. And I just want to be able to select this edge. Oops. Looks like I got some edges there. So I'm going to come in here, loop, remove loop. There we go. And now if I grab this, I think I could just grab these vertices and remove them. Perfect. Select the edges, select the ring, select this ring on the bottom and connect. Should be able to grab this vert and just pull it up. There we go. All right. Now, there's my secondary shape, and I should be able to just tools, array, oops, I just need to change my angle. Let's make sure, let's try and do that in the front, because everything was set up and working before. So we'll do tools, array, there we go. So now we have our decorative elements for our shield. All right. The last thing that's going to this guy, we're going to convert this into an edit poly. Let's go display backface cull, make sure he's not inside out. He's not. And then here on the top of this guy, we could grab this and just cap it off. There we go. Okay. All right. So now we got our different decorative elements. I can take this guy here and maybe just to give it a little bit more form when it bakes, what I want to do is I want to grab the vertices kind of, or the control points here in the center. I'm just going to scale those out, flare those up a little bit. There we go. Give it a little bit more form kind of in the center. Just a little bit. Okay, so that is what we call our high poly shield. Now, that does not need UVs. Okay? So from there, let's all right, so we're gonna stop that tutorial there because now we've built a high poly shield. So from there, we're gonna move on to the second tutorial, which is about creating a low poly version of our model and about going through and actually generating a low poly version that has UVs, and then how we take that low poly version and we bake all this high poly detail into it.